Hi everyone, I'm Kiana, director here at Plenty of Stuff Studio. And this May, in support of Mental Health Awareness Month, we've partnered with a few individuals, charities, and organisations to spark honest conversations, share real experiences, and highlight the importance of getting support when it's needed. And this year's theme is Turn Awareness into Action, which emphasises the role of community in supporting those who may be struggling with their mental health. Now, today I'm speaking with Stuart Morrison, who's opening up about his recent mental health journey. So, earlier this year, he hit a point where just pushing through wasn't working anymore, and how reaching out for help changed everything. So, today we'll be talking about what that moment looked like for him, how therapy helped, and how it's impacted both his life and his professional business side of things. So, Stuart, before we dive in, could you please introduce yourself?
Oh, hi, I'm Stu. Everyone calls me Stu. I run several different enterprises and I'm involved with seven different businesses. I've been serially self-employed for the last 30 odd years. People say, "What do you do?" I say, "What do you need?" The answer is yes. What's the question? I've got a web development company. I've got a hospitality business. I do a lot of presenting. I'm a town crier. Um, I'm generally, you would say fingers in pies, but n not in a shady, dodgy way.
Yeah, lovely. Wow, seem like a very busy man, very accomplished man as well. Thank you for introducing yourself. So, we actually came across your article that you put online about your mental health journey. So, just referring back to that article, then, can you take us back to early 2024? What was going through your mind when you realized that you needed help with your mental health? What happened there?
So, as with most of these things, as with most people's mental health crisis or inability to cope, it doesn't come out of the blue. It usually there's a lead into it, and when you look back, you go, "Oh," you might not recognize it at the time, and that was kind of what happened to me. Obviously COVID, obviously all of that happened. Everyone had a bad time. Everyone's got a bad story. Everyone's got their own tale. Mine was particularly tough because right at the beginning of lockdown, I lost my mum.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Um, we arranged the funeral. Lockdown got came in, and we had to cancel the funeral. And we basically had a very just there was five of us. My
Mm.
dad kind of fell apart because my mum was his world. He struggled for a year and then his health issues overwhelmed him and he died almost a year to the day.
Mm.
Now, as an only child, that was a lot to cope with. I had to sort out all of their estate and deal with all of that. Plus, we were still dealing with the aftermaths of COVID, and running several busy operations. I really didn't take time out. I just buried my head in the sand, locked everything in a door behind a door, and just thought, in the fullness of time, I'll work it out. And 2023, I struggled through. And 2024, at the beginning of it, I was like, I need help. I need to talk about this to someone because I'm not processing it. And I'm not it was like it was so fresh every single time I thought about it. I just kept putting it behind that door. And that just led to unhelpful just stasis. I was stuck. I just couldn't move forward. Like in my business, literally, it was just like I don't know how to make a decision anymore. It was like my brain had turned to mush.
Yeah.
And I'd also had some health challenges through COVID. I ended up in hospital with COVID. It wasn't a fun time for me either.
Um,
Um, and I decided to go running. It was a bit of a journey to get there, but I won't bore people with that. But I decided that keeping fit, that was the thing they always say throw some exercise into your mental for good mental health. And whilst I got very good at running, I ran a marathon. Um,
oh.
I I wasn't feeling that it was still day one and I was still not able to cope.
Mhm.
And I didn't know who to ask because it seems so long since the grieving process. People say it takes time, you give it time, but I'd given it time and time wasn't helping.
Mhm.
So I needed to talk to someone, and that was what was my final moment of just like, I need somebody who maybe can understand this better than me, because I kind of almost don't. I spend a lot of time briefing people and telling people what outcomes I'm after. And I kind of didn't know what outcome I was after. I was, it was an odd one. It was really odd. And for somebody who's quite a self-starter, quite able to take control of his life and do what he wants with it, it felt very alien, very odd, very unempowering. The opposite of everything that being self-employed and running your own business should be.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. That seems like you had like, you did have a lot on your plate then, and the pressure must have been immense, especially grief again is something where, yeah, it takes time, but actually grief never really goes away. It kind of it creeps up every now and then, and just on some random days, obviously. You know, we've all experienced the type of grief. But you mentioned something really important about, you know, you didn't really know where to get help. And that's the thing when I'm speaking to people and individuals, I think even acknowledging and overcoming that hurdle of okay, accepting I need help, that's a huge stepping stone. That's a huge milestone because I think, especially when you're a business owner like yourself, you know, you're accomplished, you lead people, you're a leader, in other words. People look up to you, and it's almost, I'm talking about myself here. You don't want to seem like you're letting people down. You're the strong one. You're the person people come to when they need help with their things, business and even in life in general. And so then you can almost feel stuck, like you said, like, oh, where do I go for help? Do I need help? What's wrong with me? But there's nothing wrong. It's at the end of the day, you're in need of support. And it's good that you realized that's what you needed. So who did you reach out to in the end? How did you find them? How did you know who to go to, or did you? What was the process that you went through?
So it's an interesting point, definitely. The one that, because you think to yourself, well, I'm the one who should be able to solve my own problems.
Yeah.
But sometimes you need that third party. And I've accepted in life that therapy is a good thing. I've had issues in the past that I've reached out and had help for, but these seemed very specific and very nebulous things. There was many things in my life which were a struggle, and they were becoming harder and harder for me to keep on top of. And I knew it was more than just the grief, but the grief was at the root of it. And there's plenty of help out there for grieving families and individuals to ask for help. But I kind of didn't, I, I've always been odd. I've always felt odd. I've always felt out of step with everyone. You know, hey, look.
It's
But
brilliant, though.
but that's always given me my edge. That's always given me a way of looking at the world, which I've been able to monetize and commercialize, and as I've kind of lent into it, and it's worked for me. So, how do you bundle all that up? You know, the Samaritans are very specific for crisis, and I wasn't in that kind of crisis. It was more like being underwater and being unable to see my way forward. Whereas before, I've been usually very clear about what I wanted to achieve and how I was going to go there. And I was watching a YouTube video on running, and there was this running event which was running around the coast of Wales,
Ooh,
and it looked like a fantastic event. And I thought to myself, yeah, I'd like to do that. You know, it's a long run, but I'm building up to a challenge, so why not? And it was being run by a mental health charity called Big Moose. Big plug for Big Moose, thebigmoose.co, not .com, not .co.uk, just the Big Moose. Oh, sorry, bigmoosecharity.co, bigmoosecharity.co. And there was a form, and it said, if you get in touch with us, give us some background, somebody will contact you within 24 hours. And that's what I needed. I'd been to all of the psychology therapy websites, and how do you filter 1,000 therapists and know? And it just felt like one more job that I
yeah.
just couldn't cope with, the thought of finding someone. So I just thought, screw it, I'll send them a message. If they get back in touch, they might even be able to find me a therapist. And what I didn't realize, I only found this out on my first therapy session. We got to the end of it, and I said to the wonderful therapist, John Hauker, I was a fantastic guy. I said, how do I pay for this? Well, you know, do I send you the money, the big mo? And he went, no, it's all free. I was like, what? And so the promise that Big Moose give you is Within 24 hours, somebody will contact you. Within 7 days, you will be speaking to a qualified therapist who is designed to understand your specific needs. They won't just plonk you with anyone. They'll find that within their network, they have various therapists and they will find someone for you to talk to who will be complementary to your needs. And I met John Houker, hit it off almost immediately. He was very calming. The usual thing that therapists do, asking questions which lead you down paths that not that you hadn't been down, but with a different viewpoint,
Okay.
and
Is that a
it
perspective kind of shift? Different
it it
perspective?
kind it kind of was. And then in the third session, so you get 4 free sessions with Big Moose. They give you 4 free sessions. And John very confidently said in the first session, that's all we'll need, Stuart. And I was like, really? Okay. In my head, I'm thinking, good luck. Um, and then the third session, we reached the end of it, and he said to me, I'm going to say something, and I want you to not poo-poo it immediately. I want you to understand that this comes from years of me working within the NHS as a qualified therapist and seeing many, many different people, and I've got a lot of experience about what I'm about to say. And he said, my dear boy, that big, beautiful brain of yours, and these were his exact words, you're autistic. I can see it so clearly. Your struggles are coming from your processing. And that unlocked so much for me because immediately I was like, I don't actually know what autism is. I know it gives learning challenges, but I've, I've got, I've done tests. I turned down joining Mensa.
Okay.
I don't want to sound like I'm up myself, but I am fairly smart. I'm a fairly smart cookie. And
Really? Yeah.
thankfully, that kept me that's kept me ahead of my autistic traits. I got really good at masking, really good. Um,
Yeah.
you know, passing as normal.
To your
Norm.
detriment. Yeah.
That was the key to it for me. It might not be for everyone, but for me, it was like a light bulb moment. I went away, went on a deep dive, and oh my word, the testaments that I heard from other autistics, the people I've seen online, the videos, the stories, the articles, it was just like why has nobody ever told me about this before? I always thought autism was like heavily learning difficulties. We home educated our children, and we met a lot of people in the home education field who have children with SEN, with special educational needs. And it's quite clear they need support and help,
Yeah.
but they're lovely kids that just have differences which make mainstream education difficult. So I knew I wasn't that, but by the same token, all of the things that I was reading, I was like, yeah, that's me. Hearing stories from people and going, did you reach into my brain and verbalize everything that had happened to me during my teenage years and early 20s? And so that, for me, that unlocked a lot. And in the fourth session, we explored some of the challenges in and around that, and my inability to process the grief and the transition and the change, those challenges. And I suddenly was able to be much kinder to myself and realize actually I've done a hell of a lot in my life. And to celebrate that and realize that my parents dying was always inevitable, always inevitable. And I know that, but I was better able to come to, I don't know, it was like a coming to terms with an understanding. Like a lot of times, parents get their child diagnosed and then they look into it and go, oh, that's me. That's where it's come from. The child doesn't exist out of nowhere.
Mm.
We are the genetic makeup that our parents bring to the table. And if our parents happen to be autistic, then you've got a good chance that that could be in your neuro makeup.
Yeah.
And looking back on it, I think both my parents were autistic.
Okay, yeah. I think it's again, it's the education around that. We're not taught these things. I wasn't taught about that in school, and I'm from probably a younger generation. But something you said there about, you needed to be more kind to yourself. That is something I think a lot of us struggle with because, say, for example, a friend comes to you and says, "Oh, okay, Stu, I'm struggling with my mental health. I'm experiencing XYZ." I don't know about you, but something that I would say is, okay, what help have you received? Are you resting? Make sure this and that. And I've got all this advice that if it was me, I don't tell myself because I'm like, no, push through it, get through it. You need to do this and that. And that is where the issue lies sometimes. We don't give ourselves as much kindness and compassion that we would give to someone else. And I think it's about stepping back sometimes and realizing above everything, irrespective of what job you have, what title you have, what kind of responsibilities you have as a business owner, even if you have clients and people who look up to you, you're a human above everything else. And that is what matters. And if you need help, then you should seek help and just be kind to yourself. That's really important, what you said. But I'm glad that you had that kind of light bulb moment with the therapist, and that highlights the importance of seeking professional help. Even myself, I've been to therapy, I've been to counselling, and I've tried to go through the NHS more than once. I have, it was okay. I've had good sessions. However, I did need to wait a very long time to get them
It's
sessions.
the wait. It's the wait. When you need help, it's like A&E. You go to A&E and they fix your physical body as quickly as they possibly can. And
Yeah.
that is, I don't think we understand
Mhm.
how important that is for a community, for a nation to not understand that in your time of health crisis, somebody can step in and help you.
Yeah.
And whilst we all talk about, we all need to, be kind to yourself, go and get help and all the rest of it. When it takes 6 to 12 months to just get on a call with some mental health professional, that can seem like swimming the Atlantic. Oh yeah, just swim the Atlantic and we'll give you some help. And it's like, no, I need help. The crisis is now. The crisis is here, and that's why after I'd received this help and I was staggered that they'd just given me this what amounted to around about £400 worth of therapy.
Wow.
And so I was determined that I'm very much if you take, you give. You
Yeah,
know, you might not give back, but you can play it forward.
exactly.
And so I decided that I'd raise money this year for Big Moose, and so far we've given, I think it's 7 people free therapy sessions. So seven
Wow.
people got 4 free therapy sessions. So I feel like I've not only come out of it, but the product that they gave me, my brain back, has allowed me to enjoy life again. It's like all of the colors are back up to where that I know that they're bright and saturated and fun, and I can see the good stuff and the harsh. I had a very harsh inner monologue. Always had a fairly harsh inner monologue. Mainly, it gets me out of bed and gets me going. Oh, you're going to lie here all day, are you? And just that. But it had become cruel. It was turning the knife, and it wasn't being helpful. And whilst I wasn't close to suicidal ideation, those negative thoughts, they're so draining. They're just constant in your head. And you just want somebody to just turn the volume off or switch it off or change the channel.
Yeah.
And I would urge anyone that if you are thinking, I just can't deal with this, the weight is too much, don't wait until something breaks. You don't go to the doctor when you've got a fever of 104 and you've been hacking up a lung for 2 weeks. 3 days in and you're on the phone.
Yeah.
And it
Exactly.
should be the same with your mental health. The moment you're struggling, it's not weak to say, I need some help with what's going on in here. And I think in my lifetime, I'm a good deal older than yourself. It has changed massively because when I first went to the doctor and back in my mid 20s and had a massive breakdown, I was diagnosed with depression. And what I actually now looking back on it wasn't actually depression. I think there was some elements of depression. I think it was autistic burnout. When I look back on it truly and reflect on the testimony of others, I've been through 3 bouts of really bad autistic burnout where I have not listened to my own advice that I'm giving you now or suggesting, and have been cruel to myself and pushed myself because it's like, if I just keep going, and you know this as a business owner, if I just keep going, we'll get through the cloudy bit and we'll hit some clear skies and I can take a deep breath and relax.
Mm.
and it never happens. The storm just builds up and the pressure in front of you just builds up, and you can run at it as hard as you like, but eventually it will stop you in your tracks.
Yeah, it will definitely. I think there are some very wise words indeed. And, I think that the key takeaways from this is, even myself, I didn't know that there were free resources out there. If you need help now, I felt stuck. I thought, what am I going to do if I wasn't in a position at the time to go and pay for therapy sessions? But there are resources out there. There are charities like Big Moose who are willing, more than willing and happy and able to respond to you as soon as possible and give you the help that you need. And for those who are struggling, there is strength in coming forward. Even if you're a business owner, it doesn't matter. There is strength in speaking up and getting the help. And that's really why we're here today having this conversation.
I think it's harder for business owners because, like you just said, you're the one that everyone comes to and says, so, and asks the questions, and you have the answers, or the plan, or the strategy, or the insight, or the connection, or whatever is needed. Like I said on the way in here, the answer is yes. What do you need? Um, but when you turn that back on yourself and you go, I need to ask somebody else for answers, that is incredibly difficult because you're used to being, if not like in charge, at least the person who is pointing the ship in the right direction. And then for you to suddenly have to go to somebody, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Can you help? Uh, it can feel almost insurmountable,
And
but it's almost the easiest thing in the world to actually, once you've asked the question, to just fall into it. Just embrace it. Just go, everything I've known all of my decisions have led me to this crisis. So something in my processing, something in my strategy, something in my overall approach needs to be changed. And what in your business can't you go and find a consultant for? IT consultants, HR consultants, risk consultants, you name it, there's a consultant out there. Why not a mental health consultant? Oh, I'm just going to go and check in with my mental health consultant to see if I've got anything blocking me. Is my decision making impaired? What in my toolbox? And I said this to my dad years ago. I suggested he go and get grief because he was unable to cope after the death of his dad. Again, another thing that leads me to my sort of retroactive diagnosis about my parents. But he was so resistant to it because he was of the generation stiff upper lip, keep going no matter what. And I think that's led to quite a bad outcome for not just men, but families. The man just takes it on themselves and then somehow explodes, implodes, catastrophe. And I just said to him, he was an engineer. I said, if you're an engineer and you're working alongside another engineer, and that engineer had a tool that you needed to achieve the job that you were doing, would you have any hesitation in turning to your colleague and saying, oh, could you borrow your tool for a moment? And he'd turn around and go, there you go, no problem, give it back to when you're finished. What's the difference between going and talking to a therapist? They're going to give you a tool in your mental toolbox that's going to allow you to unlock and fix or change or alter your perception of what the world is. And that, why wouldn't you do that? I've always been open to the idea that somebody might have a better idea than me about what it is I'm doing, but it's the best idea I've got at the time, so we'll go with it. And unfortunately, there's this. I'm sorry to generalize this, but I think your generation has a much more open and willing. My daughter and her friends. I was in my studio pottering, and I was listening to their friends talking, and they were all checking in with each other. We
yeah,
never had any of that. Anyone showed any hint of a mental weakness, and we all dive on it. Like,
yeah.
you weak, what are you? Whereas they're all like, oh no, she was, we went round there and we gave her a cuddle, and it was like, I think, and again, I don't wish to generalize, but I think that there is a feminine energy which is way more caring and nurturing, whereas the masculine energy can be a little blunt and a bit rough around the edges.
Yeah.
And and I think men are changing. I genuinely think the conversations I've had with other business owners recently about this, after me talking about it, have been eye-opening. People are coming to me and saying, Stu, it was really brave of you to say. I didn't feel brave, by the way. I just shared because it was like, look, if it can happen to me, it can happen to anyone. Uh, Within my small little sphere of influence and business community locally, people know me. You know, I wear loud suits, got the moustache. I'm very present, people see me.
Yeah.
So if I can say, look, I can go and ask for help, maybe if one person, and it saves them from a lifetime of pain and misery, goes and gets some help, well, I've paid it forward as a human.
Exactly. Yeah, no. I think you touched on another key point there, just very briefly, about men. They have a lot on their plate. And I think in society as well, they're looked at the stronger kind of the stronger ones, the ones who just should just deal with it, just get on with it, man up. But again, as I said earlier, they're human and there needs to be, I have noticed a shift with kind of I guess the stigma of that and mental health, especially around men, that yeah, they're men, but they're human as well. They're humans with feelings. And again, there's nothing wrong with getting help. It doesn't make them less manly, less masculine because they're getting help. They're a human, and that's it.
I find it, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole here, but I do find it fascinating the various conversations I've had over the years. And certainly in business, you are much more likely to have a genuine conversation with somebody rather than this kind of surface kind of, is everything all right? Yeah, yeah, massive. We're doing awesome. Oh, are you really? You know, your body language is telling me different. And you see, as an autist and somebody who has perfected the art of masking to the point where I've performed in plays and films and done all sorts of, autists, they can't do that. They can't be funny. How do they do that? And it's because I studied human behavior like a hawk. As a child, I realized that there were certain cues I was missing. It led to all sorts of problems at school and early in my career. So I went on a deep dive on human social interaction, basically, and became really, really good at reading social cues. But I'm not a native speaker. It's like I speak a different language. And that language it tends to attract a more feminine energy. And I tend to work with a lot of female entrepreneurs. A lot of my customers are female because I'm not a hectoring, boorish male. And I don't want to go into all of that, but
Another
I
conversation.
it's a fascinating one. But I do think things have changed massively across the board, and you are much more likely to get a real kind of beer drinking, rugby buildery type to go, I need some help. And that's great. That's what we need in society. Be kind to each other, be kind to yourself. People trip and stumble. It's not their fault. I've had friends with addictions and they've beaten themselves up. And I said, it happens. It's a life. Everybody is leading their life as best they can. And sometimes you make bad decisions for bad reasons. It doesn't write you off as a human being. Not for me, anyway. I have a very humanist outlook.
That is very true. It definitely is. But yeah, Stu, I would like to thank you so much for your time and for coming on our platform and for sharing your story. That it's been really inspiring and insightful for myself, and I'm sure it will also inspire other people. And even if it's encouraging them to go and get the help that they need, to turn to these charities, organizations, wherever they need to turn in order to get that help and know that it is okay. And just quickly before, are you still raising money for Big Moose? Are you doing the half marathon or is that already
I've
been?
done, I did a half marathon. I did a 6K. I've done a charity quiz, and I haven't got anything else at the moment. I'm doing a soapbox. I work as an MC, and sort of basically, if anybody needs someone to turn up and get on a mic, contact me. Um, and I'm donating any of my sort of earnings from that to charity. But if you want to go and donate to Big Moose, just go to bigmoosecharity.co and just donate directly to them. You don't have to do it through me. Just just they're a fantastic organisation. If you need help or you want to support them, bigmoosecharity.co.
Thank you so much. And finally, where can we find you, Stu?
StuartMorrison.com, Stuart, Morrison like the supermarket. No, they don't give me a discount.com.